So now we're recording. Super. Okay. So, I would like to know a little bit more about the process, Tilda, the workshop and how you found the 12-year-old subjects. And first, could you go back and talk to us about the impetus of the idea? And you told me you were in Portland when that came up.
Yes, I was in Portland when I wrote the script. The sort of impetus for the project, and sorry, I know some of you have already heard this now, but was through the ABC. They sent out sort of a open call for young female artists to make a 20-minute short film aimed at 12-year-old girls for International Day of the Girl, with sort of the tagline of "Write a letter to your 12-year-old self." And I thought that was really interesting, but I was also like pretty sure that a lot of 12-year-olds would be quite bored to find out how I felt about being 12. I was very curious to know about how 12-year-old girls felt about being 12 in the world we live in now.
Sorry, I had headphones plugged in.
Ah, okay. Bill Delzell, you're here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Bill here.
Hi, Bill. Tilda was just about to tell us how she came to the film, and I'll have to show you the film afterwards. Sorry, we had some internet problems.
You know, I never got an answer from anybody about the code. I just see 12 to 18 inches. I don't see a requirement for one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of in between the 12 and 18. So I never got a good answer. I'll see what kind of timing he thinks it would take to standardize. Only because I really think they're going to blow a wall out, and if they do that, then it'll seem weird to have one night in one room and.
Bill, I think you're not having a conversation with us. I'm going to mute you, my dear.
So
okay.
Okay, there you go.
Bill is multitasking.
Yes, Bill. Now we know what Bill is really doing.
Bill, well, I'll tell you about Bill. It's a wonderful invention for cutting down production time in a beautiful studio that is robotically lit. And so this is our Scree360 TV studio when we have the opportunity, and we've tested there before. But please, Tilda, continue.
Yes, that's sort of, I guess, how it began. And from there, we were successful in the grant application. And Brian and Sophie, who I think snuck in before, they sort of were the ones that really pushed me to have a go at directing and writing. It was something I never really imagined doing before, but then how we've always worked, how close productions work, and who I made my first film with. It's very collaborative, and it was sort of like that the whole way through. So me directing and writing felt like everyone was just sort of making something. The roles are much more blurred, I think, with that company. And that's what made this project really exciting, and what made me sort of really think about how I would respond to the question of making a piece for 12-year-olds as well. So I sort of knew quite early on that we wanted to make a hybrid documentary that really investigated with a group of 12-year-olds what it was to be 12, and let them be sort of the spokespersons for themselves. So to be able to really tell us how they feel. So the casting was interesting. I was in Portland, and I got sent so many beautiful audition tapes from Australia, and it was so hard to choose.
Darn, frozen.
We're going to share different experiences of of being 12. So I finally narrowed it down to our 12 subjects, and from there we sort of spoke online a lot. We did phone calls, and there were some questionnaires we sent out. And from the information I gained from them during that process, I then wrote a script. The 12-year-olds never saw that script, but it was really helpful for us. And everything in that script was words that were pulled from things they'd told me. So it was all out of their voice. And then I got back to Australia and we had sort of a 4 or 5 day workshop where we all got to get together and get to know each other and play lots of games and tasks. Like I set tasks and they would have to respond. And it was sort of during that process that we were able to form the work and rehearse some sections. And then the next sort of 4 days, we filmed the entire thing. And it was during the school holidays. That's how we sort of were able to get their time. So it was sort of like being on some strange school camp together, and making the work from there.
And both the workshop and the shoot were all in that hall. It was like a church hall, not too far from. We hunted around a lot for different ones. The one we ended up was like a 5-minute drive from our respective houses, which was kind of easy and great. So yeah, we spent 2 weeks in that hall.
And a big part of, I think, also finding the idea for this and also how we did it was restrictions. And I think I'm really interested in that with creativity. When you get given, it was a like small budget and you get a certain amount of time, and even the time to write the script and get it delivered was quite quick. And it was from all of that that we went, okay, we'll just have one location. And we have to get, we don't have time to build all the set pieces, so we're going to have to get all the 12-year-olds to help us make it. So everyone was sort of a part of creating every piece of it, and that became a really important part of actually the work itself, I think.
Yeah.
Throwing stuff in.
And I think kind of we never really got a script as the cohort. Or any kind of formal idea of what it would be. We'd known, we'd written on a piece of paper one day what our dreams were, and the next day we were talking about our favorite clothes. So it was we kind of bonded over the great mystery of it all. Like, what are we actually making here? We didn't really know, and I think that kind of brought us together a lot more.
Were there any difficulties?
I was just saying that in my perspective, after watching it and hearing what you're saying, it resonates, because my experience of it almost looked like performance art with the way the room was and how just how it was staged. And it's really interesting and lovely to hear that there was a lot of spontaneity in that.
I mean, I'm very influenced by theatre and performance art. So I think that was a really big part of, I was actually when I was writing it, I was in Portland studying art and social practice. So sort of how art can connect to communities. And I've always been really fascinated by the creative process. And I think a big part of my obsession with the creative process is the first film I was in that Brian shot. Aud was in playing my cousin. We've played many different family members, me and Audrey.
So many different family members.
I just have to be your mum now, and then I think we've got it covered.
Yeah.
But the first film that we all worked on together was shot every Tuesday, only on Tuesdays for a year. And we were only given the script at the end of that film shooting day. So we never knew it was going to happen. And there was something about that, the trust we all had for each other and the way that could evolve as we evolved as people over the year. I found, I then went off and did other films and I was like, this is just not as satisfying. And I'd also grown up doing dance theatre, and a lot of dance theatre is created by setting tasks. I don't know if you know the dancer Pina Bausch, but she has this technique where she does 6 things or 6 ways. So she'll say 6 ways to flirt with your left finger, and everyone goes off and comes up with 6 ways to do that, and then they come back and she chooses the most interesting ones and turns that into the piece. So it is a bit scary going into a film or a creative process, making theatre or a film, not having exactly knowing how it's going to go. And I'm a control freak, so that's particularly scary for me. But it was still there was sort of this trust in, we knew the parameters. Me and Brian were very sure about what we were filming and sort of had talked a lot about what it was going to look like. But yes, our 12-year-olds weren't as informed, but I think it was their incredible openness that then allowed, even though it was very planned on our end, it allowed a lot of spontaneity and play to be kept on their end, I hope.
There certainly were aesthetic jumping off points for it as well, which were performative, like theatrical, like the Elle Fanning video that you showed us early on, and Miranda July's work. And there are a few things which kind of were the kind of style guide, I guess, that we were working towards, and they are quite formal or performative. Wes Anderson's work, you know. So there's sort of like that really nice zone where you have something that's stylized and designed and very chosen, but within that, the kind of reality of people's lives, like the kids, what they were bringing and what they were saying, even within that really kind of designed space, then you bring, you know, who they are and what they were saying, and their reality comes out. And that's a really nice, when those things meet, I think that's a really nice balance, when you get that kind of really stylized, composed world and the reality of people's lives coming out within that. It's probably a better way to say that, but that's kind of the idea.
Was there a particular way, though, that you had to design your shooting for the 12-year-old girls? Because they were 12, and I suppose the time that they could be working with you, did they have 5-hour limits?
No, we pushed it much more than that.
Should we be saying this? No, I think we sort of did it was like a school day, really, I think.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, yeah, definitely there was, we decided to shoot fairly simply. Like, we always had a wide shot running, and then we always had a closer shot. So there were 2 cameras running the whole time. And we knew we wouldn't necessarily have a lot of time to film any one scene. And moreover, it might take a few turns to get it feeling natural or right or whatever. So we didn't do a lot of coverage. We basically had that wide shot and then one closer shot for every scene. And we had a lot of material like that. You know, we probably filmed, probably like 45 minutes worth of really great material over the 4 days. So we didn't spend a great deal of time on any given scene. So yeah, we moved pretty quick. And because of that, it was, as I said, it was that wide shot and then a closer shot. And that was it.
I think a lot of the, sorry, go on. You go.
I mean, before you guys, in case you didn't know, Brian is my father. Before you guys made 52 Tuesdays and Field Guide and some of your drama films and TV shows, you did a lot of docs. And so I found it really weird to watch this part of you which made docs, which I'd seen for so long, and this part of you that made drama kind of try and come together. And so it was really weird, like having to capture us saying what we meant and what was real, but also knowing that it was within this format. And so I think it was maybe harder to shoot just from a watching point of view than if you were shooting a traditional doco or a drama piece, because it was trying to capture both angles.
I think one of the funny things I think about looking back on it is there was this really elaborate sequence where all 12 people come out, and they all had to hit their chairs at exactly the right time and sit down on this line, and then one person stands up, and it's this full choreographed piece, and it took so long, and it was so hard to film and to get everyone to get it right, and like it was really like probably the hardest thing we did over the 4 days, and of course they got cut out. So funny, it's just like one of those, you know, that you remember that piece?
Yeah, the dance piece.
Yeah. Oh no, not the dance piece. No, the dance piece we ended up making as an extra, which is cool.
Right,
but the full, you know, like
the opening.
Yeah, the full opening. Yeah.
And I think that was as well realizing, like, me coming at it going, great, we'll just come up with this thing, and I've choreographed it in my bedroom, and everyone will come in and just do the thing. And then you go, oh, that's a lot harder. And then someone gets the giggles. And because we're only doing it in a wide shot, you can't cut to anything. So me and Brian would be in the edit going, like, this is why you just have cutaways. But the whole point of this scene is to have it in one shot. And to get 12 people to do something in sync was a real lesson. I also feel like the other bit we spent a lot of time on was the fart joke. That right.
You had to have one. It was great.
Right? Yeah.
We did this interpretive dance scene with 4 of us, I think. Three of us, and it had chairs, and you had to come in and sit down at the same time, and I don't know how long it went for, but it felt like eternity when you were doing the dance sequence. And it was just very painful to do, because when you get it right, someone else would get it wrong. We just shot it so many times, and then it got cut out.
Oh, well, but I recall that scene. There was a dance scene with shooting in the church.
Is it in there?
It's not in the
yeah.
film.
No, it's in the
extras.
extras.
There's like a separate clip we put up, which was the dance.
And there was a lip syncing piece as well that I feel still bad about having to cut. We had one of the girls' mothers describe their daughter. Her name's Lola. So I interviewed her and she described Lola, and I edited it. And then Lola would come out and lip sync someone else describing her.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
the poor thing spent so long on it, and we've recorded it for we spent so long filming it, and then it didn't end up in there.
No. So, any rebellion from this team of 12-year-old subjects?
Sometimes, but that
They got over it. They just got over sort of trying to get it right, like it was kind of like, well, we did that. We walked out and we sat on the chairs and like, yeah, but you all need to sit down exactly the right point, and you didn't. So, and then it was kind of like got to a point where like, this is meant to be fun and it's not fun anymore. And that was an interesting moment. And I think Tilly or I kind of went, look, here's the deal. If it works, and you kind of do the thing, then we can stop doing it because we've done it and we filmed it. So it was like, maybe just like, let's pay attention and try and get it. It was just that sort of, again, trying to find that balance between the enjoyment of the experience of the shooting and the kind of necessity of like trying to get it filmed and get it done. And I think there was a point where we went, if you guys are just messing about and like it doesn't work, like you're the ones on screen, so it's going to look stupid. You're going to look stupid. So maybe you want to pay attention and like, let's get this like good.
He was lovely on set, just a real charmer.
Someone had to crack the whip.
So here's the line where the film director and grammar school teacher sort of cross, I suppose.
Yeah, I think from a camera point of view, I could wear the bad guy hat more. So Till kind of kept being like the nice person to interact with, and I was like, hey.
That was probably helpful. Probably helpful.
But it was a huge learning curve as well, and Brian was so extraordinary to have as a collaborator on all of that, because I do feel like it was a co-directed piece in the end. And also Renata Henschke, who did all of the production design and the costumes. Everyone was so involved that it's very different from traditional filmmaking. It kind of feels like it did feel like making an art piece that then turned into a film. Like it was a real mix of both worlds, I feel. And also because it was the first time I directed, I was learning so much about, shot listing or like things that I just had never done on the other side of the camera before. So it was sort of in some ways, there was something quite beautiful about it all feeling quite new. And I felt very much like I was in the same boat as the 12-year-olds going, I don't quite know. And they keep looking at me saying, like waiting for the answer. And I'm still going, I think we got it. And I assume that's how you feel all the time in that position. But it was because it was sort of quite different to how normal filmmaking happens, there was definitely the end of every day going, does this work? Like, is this going to be interesting, or is that going to connect to people, or how does that all going to fit together in an edit? Like, there was a lot of those questions throughout the process.
And I think that feeling Till gave rise to us. That's partly why we filmed so much more than we needed as well, because there was a sense of like, these tasks are really interesting and the response we're getting is really interesting. But I don't know, is it going to work as a film together? So like, oh, well, here's another idea. And let's film that. Oh, and we could have streamers there. And, it was kind of like, we just kind of kept putting extra bits in and, which kind of truthfully all came from the script you wrote. You had so many great ideas. It was kind of like, oh, let's just try and film that as well.
And then some bits that we thought were going to be amazing. There was this whole scene that was about like them telling jokes, and it just was so bad. Like I remember at the end of this, that really didn't work. Like it was the opposite of funny. Like and there was so much stuff that was hilarious that we never expected to be funny. Like it was a really interesting experience of when it wasn't working too.
Yeah. Now, it seems like you've gained a lot of skill from making a film for 12-year-old girls. Would you do it again for younger, or for 10-year-old, or for this age group, for this audience? I think there needs to be a very innovative, or there is room for an innovative film like this, a workshop, and you could workshop like this for years, I would think, and come up with new work.
To go like, what would it be like, a field guide to being an 80-year-old man?
Yeah, yeah, just repeat.
Not a boy, a man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we, the 12-year-olds all got really, really tight, and a lot of us still hang out and talk. And so not only did it kind of hit a point in the shooting where we realized it was going to have to end, but we all started speculating on like when we would come together and do it again. So there was this huge grandiose talk of like, you know, we'll do a field guide to being a 16-year-old when we're all 16, because everyone wants to do it again.
Like the 7-Up series.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, I encourage it. We want to see more, and certainly in Berlin, they'd love to see more.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're 16 next year, so
I was going to say, how long do we have? Okay, a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
think about it.
And that's in Australia, adult, right? You're 16. I think that was the
18.
question. It's
18.
It's 18. Okay, in the US too. What else? When else is a transitional year, Fiona? I love that that 12 was the last year of childhood, in a sense. And Tilda, is that why you chose it?
Well, it was actually sort of just a part of what we were, that was our audience, was 12-year-olds. But I have always had a real fascination with age and the loss of being, like, when childhood ends. That was one of the first things I think, that was after 52, but for school, I made this one-woman show that was sort of all about coming to terms, trying to help myself come to terms with the fact that I was an adult, and I just wasn't up. I just didn't love that idea, and I had to sort of make something to understand it. And I felt very similar about the 12-year-old thing like that. I remember crying on my 13th birthday. I was so upset to be becoming a teenager, because all I'd heard about teenagers is that they're just awful. You know, I just was so horrified by the idea of it. And I think there was definitely something about 12 that also really made me interested in creating a piece of work about that age.
Had you discussed that at all with the ABC, and why they chose 12-year-olds as this challenge?
I didn't. I should have. That's in retrospect.
I think from some of the literature they put out around it, it was as much about their kids' channel. If you make something for 12-year-olds, it works for kind of anywhere from 8, or 7 up, because there's a lot of aspirational viewing. You kind of want to watch kids who are slightly older than you and sort of try and figure the world out from their point of view. So I'm sure there are other reasons, but that was one I remember reading about. It was kind of like, it really worked for their kind of demographic of who their audience was, to have, to engage anywhere from sort of, 7 till 12-year-olds, which is the main sort of bulk of who they were programming for at the time.
Very, very, very interesting. And I have a question about one of the words. I like to ask our audiences if they learned any new words, particularly if it's a foreign film, but since this was Australian English, there was only one word that I sort of stumbled over, and I want to check the meaning. Daggiest. What does daggiest mean?
Right. That's a very Australian thing. Daggy's like, what would you say, Aud? Like a dork, like a bit uncool.
Dorky, like uncool. But not in glasses. But not in a glasses way. Like, oh gosh, what is it? It's like Napoleon Dynamite, I would call Daggy.
I feel like a lot of people would describe me as Daggy. I grew up being called Daggy a lot. Daggy. My parents.
Not fashionable, it's like not focused on looks and fashion and being cool and hip. It's kind of not that.
But it's actually
what a dag actually is. Sophie's saying what it like. Tell them what a dag actually is, and it's like a piece of poo left on a sheep's bum. Yeah,
That is the definition I'd heard from an Australian friend years ago.
Like, bit of poo is stuck in the wool of it on a sheep's bum grows into what they call a dag. Around it, cut the dags off, and sheep then look with these like basically poo dreadlocks coming out. Like they look daggy, like, and so then that kind of notion of someone who doesn't quite look right is. I think that's kind of how the term is.
Funny. But now, Tilda, you mentioned having grown up in a circus family, so everything went. I can imagine you'd be called Daggy. Everything goes. They were in a circus family.
Well, yeah, I grew up doing circus. My parents didn't. My mum was a dancer and dad was a lighting designer and production designer. So it was very much like, you know, the hope of me getting a real job was almost zero to none there from the beginning. But yeah, I grew up doing circus, and from the age of like 9 to 19 or something, I did it pretty full time. And then realized that you could still do the performance part without having to spend hours really hurting yourself, and that felt better. So yeah.
Even growing up with a open artistic family, you still had to interact with the greater society and school, and I guess that's where your notion of yourself as a dag or being a dag probably came from, less than the family, right?
Yeah, definitely. Just like slightly unaware of, just thought everyone was into the arts and the weirdness that I was into, and that was quite quickly beaten out of me when I got to high school.
But I mean, in terms of your family, Tilly, you've got this incredible, you grew up in a scout hall, turned into a house. And I always thought that you wanted to replicate that with 12. That was just where, like, because I'd been to your house and we rehearsed there a little bit and then went into this other hall to film. And so I think there was definitely a common theme there. But that certainly came from your parents' performing arts love, I think.
Yeah, and I think so much of that film's really inspired by the work my parents did as well, like the sort of physical theatre world that I grew up in, that they did. The first show I was in, professional show I was in, my mum was in with me. We were both dancing in it. I was 12 and my dad did the lighting for it. So, and it was very much, physical, sort of episodic work that was non-linear, that sort of was all about age. So.
Wow. Can we see it? Is it documented?
I don't think so, actually. I don't think it is documented, but it was a great show. There was an 80-year-old man in it, and I was sort of the youngest in it, and it was called Jamming.
Wow, love that. Fiona?
Yeah.
Day in the life of? I thought maybe that you're kind of close in age with Audrey. Audrey, how old are you now?
I'm about to turn 15.
Okay, not quite.
5 years old.
Fiona's 19.
I'm 20.
Oh, 20, pardon me. Correct. I was just curious about exchanging days in the life of someone closer to 12 than the rest of us. What is life like now for you? Typical day, I suppose, in shelter-in-place order.
Well, I certainly sleep much more than I did when I was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. Locked in the house.
But I noticed that since the beginning of quarantine, I've felt more like a child than I have in ever since I felt like a child. I think like I am just feeling more expressive with myself, and maybe that's me kind of getting a little bit stir crazy, but just not really caring as much because there's no
from a bystander's point of view, it's a little bit of a throwback. This time in quarantine is where our young adult children, you know, were out. Now they're all home and we're under the same roof again. But some of the themes and some of the activities are the same activities, but if I think about what Fiona was at 12, it's just 8 years down the road. So they're still dancing in the dining room. We've cleared the furniture out. They're still dancing in the dining room, and there's still discussion around the dinner table. And so it's a little bit of a throwback with the wrinkle of everyone's 8 years on in experience and wisdom or something like that.
Something like wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like an enforced family holiday, but in your home.
Yeah.
But prolonged. You don't get to leave after Christmas.
I think you guys are probably in quite a bit more full-on quarantine than us. Our kind of limits are lifting at the moment because we're very, very low virus rate. So we're like getting out again. I'm going back to school on Monday and stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We've been isolated for 7 weeks in our house now, and then we're still saying you're allowed to go to the shops and whatever, but it sort of lives after the weekend.
We've had like 9 days of no new cases in our state, so like we're pretty good.
We're lucky.
Very lucky. It's kind of passed by.
How have you found it, or has it changed? Like, because I know that you just started high school and like had a whole different social experience. And
I think I had a year of kind of nervously adapting to high school last year, and I've just kind of become properly independent and started, only coming home after school when it's necessary and things like that. So it's kind of weird. It's good. Like we all get along really well. So it's fine because, there's not much tension in our house, and there's not a huge difference between normal life and this, I guess. But, it feels a bit weird to suddenly get independence and then lose it again for a period of time. I kind of just lost touch with my friends for ages there. But I've started talking to them again. But it's been really weird, I have to say. So much of my day is spent not in the house, and I'm doing many of the same things. Like I'm doing online school, but it doesn't feel the same because there's not the places and the transport and everything to get there, which is kind of a big thing for me. So it's weird, but I'm enjoying it, I guess. Almost at the end. 2 days left. So.
And when did you shave your head?
This shave was done a week ago, and I shaved it myself. But the first time I ever shaved my head was last year, in August, because I was playing Uncle Fester in the Addams Family in a musical. I shaved my head so that they could fit the bald cap over because it didn't go over my curly hair.
Okay.
And then I grew out a big afro again, and then shaved it all off again because I felt like it, and dyed it pink that time.
Ooh.
So good stuff.
Wow.
I just like feeling very different all the time. I look at a photo of me from 2 weeks ago and it's not me, because I guess I'm just in that weird teenage transitional period where everything needs to feel different, which is why quarantine's been really weird, I guess.
I've had to change things very frequently the last month or so.
That's great. How do you mark the changes? Do you document them in some way? Do you take pictures?
No. I like the idea of I like the idea of getting a haircut and letting it grow out, and like your hair is the timeline. because there's like a very drastic difference for me with short hair and long hair, because my long hair just gets bigger and bigger because of how curly it is. So it's kind of a cool period of time when it's like growing out in between. So I guess that's kind of how I document my change. Like, it's just whether you see me during that time.
Your hair grows really fast.
Really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Healthy. Wow. I'm wondering about the next collaboration. I mean,
well, I started making a film just with Audrey and one of their friends, Maddie, about two young skater kids. And Tilly is in that, plays Audrey's older sister. And we filmed the beginning and the end of that film in 2015. And the middle part of the film where the kids are older, I'm just sort of working on the script for that at the moment, and that'll be sort of hopefully in the next 18 months or 2 years. And then Tilly is working with Sophie on adapting a book to a feature script. Maybe you want to talk about that one, Till?
Yeah, I've sort of just been working on that today. That's what's been quite good about quarantine for me, is actually getting time to write. And it's very new for me, but it's something I've just fell in love with the book so much. And like a few years ago, and then had the realization, I kept thinking like, oh gosh, it would just make such a good film. And then I went, oh, you're just allowed to do that yourself. So I sort of went and met with these guys and told them about it. And then they read the book and sort of agreed. And now we're here. So we're sort of just very much in the scripting process at the moment. We've done a first draft, but it's ridiculously long and the end needs to change a lot. So we're still very much at the beginning, but it's been a great way to start again. And I think sometimes I wonder if I'm just doing it because I just secretly want to work with these guys all the time. So you just have to keep finding little ways to develop things.
That's what,
hang out and make.
it seems like a good combination, and so why mess with it? Because the alternative is trying to find that group, and we're all trying to find that group that we have such a nice groove with. And yeah, stick with it. I'm looking forward to the next one too.
I can't wait to see what Audrey makes next.
I
feel like that's what I'm excited about.
So Audrey, if you have something that you want to share on Screen360 TV, I will put it out to our audience.
I don't know about films. I am quite vocal in the poetry scene, the slam poetry scene here. So I do a lot of that.
Great.
And I'm a climate activist as well. So I'm part of my school strike group, and I speak at a lot of rallies. So that's kind of my vibe at the moment. But I'm also, I do a lot of speaking about my experience of gender, which was kind of alluded to in a field guide, and then later came into its own a bit, which I guess it's kind of weird for me doing interviews or looking back at 12, the film, because at the time I was using she, her pronouns and I was a girl, or identifying as one, but I'm now I'm non-binary, and I did a TED talk on that not many months after we filmed 12. And so I think it's been a weird journey since then, because I was, and I don't regret 12 in any way. It's just weird to look at again, because I've come such a long way and it's been a really public journey. And so I do a lot of speaking on that now. Yeah.
I was thinking about that when we were talking about it earlier, because it's called, what is that?
That's my screensaver.
Screensaver. It says,
Error 404.
Error 404.
Great.
That's so good. I was just thinking about that all because I was realizing at the beginning when I was talking about, because girl is in the title of Field Guide, it's very hard to discuss without mentioning that it was 12-year-old girls that we were working with. And I think that there was a few people in that group that were really, we talked about gender quite a lot in the conversations we all had.
And I kind of view it as a group of people who aren't male And so I think the kind of the impact of the film is that, you know, it's for people who are not always represented on screen, but also not always talked about openly, and need strong role models and independent role models. And I think that kind of is why I'm cool with the film still. Like, it feels separate from the idea of girl to me, if you know what I mean. Like, it's a more fluid representation of it than traditional viewing.
And I think it was very much about choosing people that all felt, you know, I think all of you were such great people to just discuss the age and the time that we live in. It's sort of like a little weird documentation of the world at that moment for all of you as individuals. So it would be amazing to go back and do it again and see where you're all at now.
You truly were an anthropologist looking under your microscope in a way, and the role that you played was perfect.
Yeah, I'd be intrigued to see how you've all changed if we went back and did it.
At 18 would be great, just as I finished high school, you know, like,
So
you know,
true.
that's the
I'm
next,
not
like,
filming in year 12.
no, but when you finish,
I see.
like, when you finish high school and you're like, now stepping into the rest of my life, what's that going to be? And, you know, and, you know, who knows at that point, but there's a great sense of freedom I found in my life at that point, where you're like, oh, I don't need to go to school every day anymore. That's awesome. What does life look like? It's kind of like catching up with the same characters at that particular moment would be really cool.
What do you think, Fiona? Would that be a good point?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be very interesting. I mean, I didn't feel the same sense of, I mean, I think everyone's experience coming out of high school is very different, but I know that I didn't necessarily feel that, like, yes, I didn't have to go to school every day in the summer, but I was gearing up to go to school, and I ended up leaving the school 4 months into being there because it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I didn't have the capacity to really understand that at that point. So it'd be, if I were to answer a question about like what I don't know what I want to do with my life at the age of 18 coming out of high school, I would have been like dumbfounded and not been able to speak about it because I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, it's an amazing time period to look back on. I mean, at 18, I was still traveling with the Circus, and was sure that was what I was going to do, and never imagined living in America or being in films. We'd made a film at that point, but I was kind of like, oh, cool. Like, that was great. And didn't really see it as something going on until that came out in the world and we went on to it. So I do think that it's true. 18 to 19 is probably the other big thing, like 12 to 13, that other big, like, few years of where it's really a big time of change.
Well, if you want to test, I think Fiona would take a look at a rough draft, and Jyoti has a niece and
I don't know if
nephew.
I'm qualified.
You've recently come from 18 and graduated high school. And Jyoti also has a niece and nephew who watched with us last week, and they watched 52 Tuesdays also. So they know your work. And
yeah, they couldn't make it.
They couldn't make it today. But your niece is in a media arts magnet school. And so that would be valuable in the future of Screen360 TV. This is what we had hoped to do, is set up our audience network as a place where professional filmmakers could test their work with young audiences. So consider that for the future. Right. Hopefully we could build an audience. I wanted to check in with your time and see how you're all doing.
I'm going to have to jump on a call soonish.
Yeah.
I've got a few more minutes though, so.
Sure. Any last thoughts? Any burning questions anyone like to ask?
I was curious about how, when at the beginning of 12, how all of the participants came together and what the vibe was like when they were all introduced to each other, and kind of how they bonded with each other. What was it like when they were all first introduced, or did they have any
I'll let Aud maybe answer most of that, but the first time we sort of all got together, I'd made a sort of PowerPoint and like a sort of whole introduction to what we were doing and like what the rules of the space were and how we were going to do it. And I think the first thing we actually did was create a list of rules together of how we all wanted to treat
on my wall.
Is it?
Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, we had a whole list. We came up with the rules together about how we wanted it to run, and how everyone would feel safe. And I think that was also a big part of, you know, it's scary even as an adult going onto a film set. It always feels like the first day of school and you're not sure how to behave or what the rules are. And there was a lot of people from different experiences. And I think also like we had beautiful Hannah, who has disability. And we just wanted to make sure that everyone was really clear about, you know, how to respect everyone in that space and have everyone feel really comfortable. But Aud, you might be able to speak a bit more of what that felt like.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I'd been there since about 6 that morning, and everyone kind of came at 8, because I had, you know, been there, helping these guys set up and getting biscuits out, etc. And so it was weird because I was already so accustomed to the space, and it was kind of felt like I'd just been with my family all morning, and so I was quite confident. And I remember the first person who came in was Carrot, who I'm now still friends with. And I had seen her audition tape and I was like excited to meet her. I was like, whoa, hey, how you going? And it was just this like shy, everyone was so shy and withdrawn the first day, you know, like edging into it. And I guess I was trying to be like the confident adult of the group. And I really remember that quite fondly. I was like, I just remember being like, I know what's going on here, which is a very 12-year-old attitude, I think, wanting to kind of be in control and not really knowing how. And I think I also wanted to be the most like different. I wanted to be the most different because I think I was still kind of reckoning with my gender stuff. Like I was in my head going, you know, I think I'm a girl, but I'm kind of not. And so I wanted to like be the one that was maybe not a girl, but is still there. And so I had this really weird juxtaposition between like everyone else coming in very much themselves and me having this weird confident facade. And I think it lasted for a little while, but what was quite incredible about the experience and the group of people was that with the activities we were doing and with the tasks we were doing to build it, we all settled into ourselves and kind of maybe even found a new version of ourselves. I know Cadence came in really shy and by the end of it, and wearing heaps of black, like she wore black combat boots all the time. And then by the end of it, she was like wearing yellow jumpers and she was like, I like this colorful version of myself. And so I think it kind of changed all of us.
She had an amazing journey, didn't she?
Yeah.
And I think that was a real big thing of that first day. And we sort of did it every day, but just playing lots of games and changing the activity all the time. So as soon as it started to feel a bit boring, then we'd do the next one. So that we'd go between physical tasks to then sit down and tell me like, who are the people you look up to? Or like, what words would you use to describe a 12-year-old? Or like, we just did lots of tasks like that. And then other ones that were sort of, you know, theater games about like walking around the space and not banging into each other, like sort of being aware of people's space. There was physical things where they had to sort of trust exercisey kind of things that we did. Like there was a lot of different ways that we played games. And then obviously the chapters that you see, we first did those as tasks that I recorded on my phone. And then we'd choose our favorite bits and recreate them sort of.
It was interesting from a more slightly external perspective to answer the question, because I started in the room with everyone and then I was just off lighting and organizing gear and whatever. So I would just check in at a certain point every day on the workshop as it was kind of happening. And yeah, day one, everyone was shy and quiet or trying to be confident, but you know, like it felt like a room of people that didn't yet know each other. And then, you know, but even by the end of that day, there was a little more warmth and a little more kind of chatter, and then the beginning of the next day is back to being a little standoffish, and then, but certainly by the end of the second day and certainly into the third of the fourth day, it was like, okay, now everyone's just chatting and laughing, and it's getting to the point where it's like, this feels like these guys know each other now. So the work Till was doing with them was definitely kind of fast tracking those friendships and relationships. So certainly by the end of the fourth day, we were very much making the music that was going to be in the film and learning choreography and kind of, rehearsing scenes. And it got to the point within that, like a short period of time where it was, everyone was kind of like knitted pretty quick.
And I think because of the nature of the tasks and the fact that we were, 12 is this age of looking out at the world and wondering what it's going to be and being curious about everything, or at least it was for me. Having this 2 weeks in the middle of school holidays, just to be super introspective and meet new people, but kind of think about what it is to be you and talk about it every day. I think a lot of us, as Cadence did and as I did with my gender, kind of reached a point by the end of it where we were not only a different version of ourselves, but a more comfortable version. We were, had this introspective time to actually reflect on things. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the workshop that we did, but also just filming something in a really short period of time in one space with a group of people. Like, it really is a very tight-knit kind of thing.
It was filming camp.
Yeah.
Filming camp.
It was
We were all
filming
very
camp.
sad to say goodbye.
Yeah, Tilda, thank you very much. A beautiful piece, such economy and beauty, and I hope we do see Field Guide to being an 18-year-old subject.
Yeah, sounds great. Let's do it.
Do it. I'll be there. I'll be there. Okay, thank you all very, very, very much for your time. So rich. I'll send you a copy of this recording.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Fiona, Elizabeth, Jyoti, thank you all. Jyoti, if you have a second, we can chat afterwards.
Thank you.
So we'll say goodbye.
So much for your work.
Bye-bye. Everybody, you can let yourselves out.
Thank you.
There. Hi. Wow. That was...
I felt so bad.
Oh, can you believe?
I almost wish I knew how to do what you were doing so I could take over, but unfortunately.
But you know what? Actually, it did work out, and I'm going to stop the recording.